what PMDD really looks like is right after ovulation, when your estrogen is dropping dramatically, the progesterone begins to increase, and that is called our luteal phase. And during that time, significant shifts happen in our bodies due to the sensitivity from the hormones. So what that can look like is extreme sensitivity to rejection. So say if my partner didn't want to watch TV with me that night and he legitimately wanted to go to bed, I, in my spinning thought, would say, oh my gosh, he's texting someone, he's, cheating on me. I don't make him happy. He's going to leave me.
How you doing here, Rachel? Are we all set up?
I think so.
Awesome. So guys, before we get started real quick, I want to introduce you to Rachel Fox. So Rachel is somebody that I met by way of RTT. For those of you who know, I'm a coach and I practice something called rapid transformational therapy. It's a form of hypnosis. I met Rachel at a really cool alumni event in the city last year. And, when you're in these kinds of events, you're like, oh, what got you into this? And she goes, PMDD. And I was like, I don't even know what that is. And then I didn't really ask her what it was. And then somebody else said the same thing to me. She goes, oh, I got into this because of PMDD. And I was like, what is this PMDD? So I went back and asked, and I'm not even going to try to describe it here because I'll butcher it. I want Rachel to describe it. But what it confirmed for me was what I knew, which was past traumas, things that we've experienced that have caused us to feel certain emotions that are toxic, can really manifest themselves physically if not dealt with correctly. And what's been so interesting to me is just even as early as this morning, I've been having people, since I've been promoting this podcast, coming to me and saying, oh my God, this is on PMDD. I think I have that. So I was like, great, tune in, because this is the goal of this kind of podcast. It's really to help educate and inform people so they can learn about themselves and how to deal. So I'm really excited to have Rachel. Rachel considers herself a PMDD holistic hypnotherapist and coach. And without further ado, hi, Rachel.
Hi. So happy.
I'm so excited.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. So Rachel, why don't you just tell us a little bit about who you are and what we do, what you do, and we'll just get into it.
Well, yeah. So I came to understand that I had PMDD when my life was absolutely falling apart. My symptoms skyrocketed during COVID. I lost my job. My world was absolutely falling apart. My relationship just walked out the door. I have 2 teenage daughters, and there was just so much suffering going on. And up to that point, I was undiagnosed, but knowing that every month there was episodes of, there was growth over this 20-year timeline, but there was, it started off with depression in high school, very, very dark moments. And that really stuck with me. And then about a decade later, there was a lot of anger that was coming. And I never was a person who was a woman tracking her cycle. I just knew the times that you could get pregnant, which is ovulation. It's the only really phase that we know about. And no one was talking about it. I would go into doctor's offices and OBGYNs, and no one mentioned anything about symptoms or what you might be going through. So I just thought there was a lonely place inside of me. There was something hurt. I knew that enough. I was always reading self-help books, always trying to become the best version of myself, but knowing that there was a really lonely place. And it wasn't until really my world came crashing in that I got really serious about understanding more about what was going on and these cues and signals. My partner at the time thought I could be bipolar, and that is a diagnosis that goes very much alongside PMDD. And because it's just not still recognized in, culturally. So he left, and I Googled rage before period. And that's how I learned about PMDD. PMDD is premenstrual dysphoric disorder. 1 in 20 sufferers um, have this debilitating disorder, and 5% are suicidal.
Mm.
I, for the first time, felt validated, like in my pain. It was like, going to a foreign country for the first time, and you're like in awe. It felt so resonated to everything that I knew. It was like this new discovery of who I was. But at the same time, it was also scary because I was going on these Facebook forums and knowing that I've already tried the supplements. I already tried the SSRIs. I've already tried that cocktail of medication that wasn't working. I already tried to eliminate alcohol and gluten and dietary restrictions. I also had been on the ketamine treatments for psychotherapy.
Wow.
Or I was trying to do everything I could to manage. And so I found myself identifying in these forums, but then also very lost. But just as I am an avid researcher in all life, I took it upon myself to continue deep diving, drilling into these search engines within these Facebook and going post after post about healing and treatment and what was working. And the odd, funny thing is, because I was at this life transition, I lost my job during COVID. I was looking and pursuing um, something that was going to be more satisfying than what I was previously doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt my position in my life was at this, border point call of transition. COVID gave me the opportunity to make a change in my career, something that was more fulfilling. And I had already put a call into Marissa Peer to learn about the school. And I then found myself in these forums reading that RTT was treating PMDD. And
Wow.
so I called the school back, and because there was a follow-up call about signing up and going in with the program. And I said, I do not want to do this unless if I can understand that RTT can actually work for me. If RTT can I wasn't even looking for it to eliminate my symptoms. I was looking for it to just manage, because living with this disorder is one of the most horrible existence you can. You don't have a life. 2 weeks out of every single month, you are suffering. And I just couldn't believe that there could possibly be hope. I was not familiar.
Can you describe, because you've used some terms, like you were like, my world was crashing in, I was suffering. Can you, to your best ability, like get to as specific as possible of what that might look like? Only because if someone's listening, I want them to be like, holy shit, this is me. Like, I wanted to get as specific as possible so we can educate people on what that looked like. Because PMS can be tough for people, but I know this is so much different than that. So if you could just describe what crashing in and suffering look like for you.
Well, I think it's also interesting you said PMS, because I think that we often told to live with severe PMS even, and that could very well be PMDD.
Right.
So what PMDD really looks like is right after ovulation, when your estrogen is dropping dramatically, the progesterone begins to increase, and that is called our luteal phase. And during that time, significant shifts happen in our bodies due to the sensitivity from the hormones. So what that can look like is extreme sensitivity to rejection. So say if my partner didn't want to watch TV with me that night and he legitimately wanted to go to bed, I, in my spinning thought, would say, oh my gosh, he's texting someone, he's, cheating on me. I don't make him happy, he's going to leave me. And it's
because he doesn't want to watch TV.
Right.
Right.
to explosive rage, uncontrollable rage. It's something that you cannot stop. It's like hours of being on a tangent. Like you have a right, you have something that you need to convey, and this is like the only thing that you like are focused on. It's like a hyper focused on a message that needs to be declared only through like yelling and screaming. And
And
then,
how would you feel after those
well,
episodes?
so 3 days later, sorrow, shame, guilt, tears, debilitating depression, so much embarrassment. I mean, I have 2 teenage daughters. You feel like you could barely pick yourself off the floor.
And how would that show up at work? Could you
well,
could you manage it at work or no?
I could, but it was very problematic at times, with communication with my managers. It never really came across so much with the team that I led. But when I was given instruction or feedback during this luteal phase, it was a spinning interpretation of what he really meant. So I always thought like I'm on the verge of getting fired. Like you have incredible doubt. You have like the worst self-esteem. Chronic fatigue is a really big one. Panic attacks. Again, this looping, spinning thought that you just
And this is every 2 weeks a month.
Yeah. So 2 weeks before you have your period. And some it lasts the entire time. Some it's like an ebb and flow. So it'll be like, lightning strikes and then you manage. And then oftentimes because of the rise of progesterone and then the fall, there's usually another spin out, whether that looks like it's a little different for everyone. I have clients now who, really struggle just on the panic attacks or like debilitating depression and then rage. I have taken a poll in some of these groups and anxiety is number 1 and the panic attacks, and number 2 is rage. And then 3 is depression.
So fast forwarding, you're in this really serendipitous situation where you've lost your job, you've been kind of thinking about going a different route. You were already investigating rapid transformational therapy to become a practitioner. And at the same time, you're in these forums and people are talking about rapid transformational therapy, or otherwise known as RTT, as a means to heal. So you're like, okay, we're in this like transition here where we're hitting a vortex where things are kind of combining. You end up using RTT as an experiment to see if it'll work.
Right. Okay. Because first of all, I needed 2 things. I needed to know that this worked. Because if it worked, then I'm becoming more a whole person. I'm healing, and there is nothing more that I wanted more. I needed that more than I needed the job. Okay. So all of a sudden my next luteal phase came, and you sort of like batten down the hatches, like and for someone who is very aware, the sufferer, the family is involved. It's like, okay, mom, this is mom's cycle. Like it's not
right.
It's a household affair. It's a household event. And you get your family involved, everybody knows, supporting partners are involved in this transition. But so this next luteal phase, it was like, okay. And then there was nothing.
Now, and this is after you did the RTT session.
Yeah. And it was the wildest experience of my life. So I will never forget how I knew it should be coming. And I just kept on saying, I'm like, okay, this day feels okay. Like, I don't feel like, like a maniac. Like today I can handle today. And then the next day. Now I see healing as a daily event. So it wasn't like all of a sudden everything was completely gone, but I knew that something turned over. I knew like there was tremendous progress from where I was to what happened within that next like 4 to 5 weeks.
So, you and I know the terminology, we know RTT. If you and I were having a conversation over margaritas, which we have, my question to you would be, what came up for you? But because I already know about RTT, I want to just back it up a little bit. We're going to get to that piece. But, for people that don't know what RTT is a methodology where people undergo a really transformative therapeutic model in hypnosis. You're brought into a hypnosis state, which is quite easy to do, actually. You're just in this dreamy state, kind of a trancy state. You're awake, but your conscious mind is really asleep. And your subconscious mind is in the driver's seat. And your subconscious mind is where all of our feelings, all of our core beliefs are stored like a database forever, from when we were in gestation, from when we were born, when we were toddlers, teenagers. Every single little moment, every single minute of our life, when we're having feelings and we're making core beliefs, are kind of registered and stored. So in rapid transformational therapy, a trained practitioner is able to go in, really speak to the subconscious mind, ask it to kind of show us some scenes relative to what the person's working on, and allow the persons to start to see some of their experiences through a different lens. And that's part of the healing process. It's a long process, and I'm not going to get into all of it here, but that's kind of what happens at the beginning. So I'm wondering for you, Rachel, because people are going to be like, wait a minute, you've got PMDD. What does that have anything to do with healing emotionally?
Yeah.
And I believe everything. I was showing earlier in one of my stories, there's this book, and it's called Feelings Buried Alive, Never Die. Tell me you have it. It's right there. Right. Because we as practitioners know, and this is not required reading, guys. It's just that we're all in the loop. We as practitioners know that unresolved emotional trauma can manifest itself physically. Okay, so when I received a diagnosis of rheumatoid arthritis, I really started working on emotionally healing some things I thought I had finished healing, which clearly I had not. So tell me, Rachel, to the best of your ability, what were the things that came up for you basically in which was manifesting physically as PMDD?
Well, I just want to say too that the luteal phase, so this window of time, so
Yeah.
we have 4 phases in our menstrual cycle.
Okay.
And this final stage before we bleed, before menstruation, it's now as like PMDD is being more talked about and more organically and holistically becoming an approach to healing with tracking your menstrual cycle. The luteal phase is seen to create like a tiny microscope in our lives. And here we are, we face this mirror every 2 weeks, and we have to address that there is an unmet need, an unresolved pain, and unresolved trauma. Now, trauma can obviously be big or little trauma as we know it, big T, little t, however it's familiar for you to talk about, but it's not really based upon an event, but upon a negative imprint that you took in when you were a child.
The feeling.
So that could, yes, the feeling. What happened? Where did that go in your body? Where was that stored? And what did you tell yourself about that event? So that's where I was already doing so much of this like self-healing process during. So I knew that when I understood what RTT was, that if it was going down to an unmet need or pain, I was ready to go into this place because I was really, really ready for
And
healing.
you were aware. Like when I work with clients, and I talk about this on my website a lot, when I talk a lot about being stuck, I have like a whole page about what does it mean to be stuck, because it's different for everybody. I identify and say, I usually have one of 2 different types of clients, either the aware, people that have known there's something that I experienced And it what felt traumatic at the time, and I still know it as a trauma. And the unaware, people who don't recognize that just feeling neglected, abandoned, rejected, unseen, unheard, insignificant, unimportant, unsafe, that feeling can be very traumatic. You don't have to be at the hand of an abuse or a violation per se.
Right.
Right. And so a lot of times people come into it unaware because they didn't have an abuse and they don't know that trauma can occur without a violation. So you're going into it already aware, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
And like you said, that is the key to healing, is awareness.
Yeah.
You can't be in denial of where you're at and be ready. And so, it was, for me, my time. It was everything in my life, my personal rock bottom that led me to finding and being ready for healing.
And what were the core beliefs that you realized you were walking with by, like, what did you realize in that RTT session?
Well, of course, that, I am enough and that I am lovable and that I am safe. So you mentioned what, sort of came up. When I was 6 years old, my family was very familiar with going to Jersey beaches, and my uncle's family was with us as well. I was at the time the youngest cousin at 6. My mom was pregnant with my brother. And all of the cousins we had permission to walk the beach, and I was with them. And being the youngest, I was probably a little bit more curious and playful than the others. And they were attracted to doing like one thing, walking the beach. It got sort of sidetracked, uh, watching this thing going in and out of the ocean. Behind me was a family who was building this huge sandcastle. And I told them I was going to be playing with this family and building the sandcastle. So I just got lost in a beach day and I started playing until I turned around and nobody was there. And literally for hours, and this was absolutely terrifying for my parents, now being a mother, I was lost for hours on the beach. I was found, I was safe, nothing happened, but I came away from that no one is looking for me. Like I was okay being gone, like removed.
Like you were not important enough to be found.
Yes.
Right.
I was abandoned.
Right.
So, was I welcomed back in loving, crying arms of my mother and father? Yes. But it was a terrifying moment when I was 6 years old.
And it was the truth. It was your truth. Because the truth was you were feeling that way, but the other truth was they actually were looking for you.
Right.
But the 6-year-old mind is not rational. It's the intellectual piece of it's not fully developed by any means. And it can't comprehend all these other things are happening, can only focus on what's happening. And so you walk now from 6 until whatever, looking at life through a lens of I'm insignificant. I think this is a really, really, really important thing for people to see, because this is so much of what we deal with people in RTT. It's these little moments, these flashes of time, these minuscule moments within a whole lifetime that can literally change the full lens through which you see every life experience, how you see yourself. And you just said earlier, in that luteal phase, your biggest thing was rejection. And rejection always comes from not feeling enough and not feeling significant and not feeling important, whether or not that's the truth or not. It's what we felt. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And so when you were in that RTT experience, were you able to see, you were what, in your 40s when you went through that experience?
Yeah. So yeah, 42.
Okay. So now you've been going through that for 38 years or
Mhm.
so. And, were you able to see in that experience, wow, that was my belief at that moment, but I don't believe that anymore.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's the beauty of what Marissa Peer
Yeah.
created, is this amazing tool pouch of all these fascinating tools for me to finally understand that. And the other, you know, thing to know about the luteal phase is it's the mirror of your inner child, that little you that's screaming out. So those symptoms that are rage and the depression and the anxiety, the chronic fatigue, there is an unmet need of this little child, this inner you, little you, who's trying to get your attention and saying, like,
Mm,
I'm still hurting, I'm still in pain. And until you uncover that truth for what it is and you see it now with your adult eyes, of course, I'm not
right.
6 anymore. I'm safe. I am significant. I have my own life. I have my own children, my own home. And you see it now from the perspective of you. And it's this fascinating undoing of no longer allowing that imprint to control your life anymore. You are now in the driver's seat of your life.
Such a beautiful example of the work that we do.
Yeah.
Such a beautiful example. So I'm sure people want to know, did it ever come back? Were you fully resolved from this issue?
Um, I I see healing also as a daily event, like I said
Hmm.
before. And you have to stand by witness to yourself to do the work. You have to show up every single day and commit to your journey. And I have there was a time about a year ago where I felt very justified to, let's say, like, lash out. But I was also in my luteal phase. Um, but I saw it in a different way. It wasn't a place of rejection. You're going to go through upsetting times. You're going to go through tests in your life. You're going to go through good days and bad days, but it's understanding now who you are. What was I PMDD completely symptomatic free? No, but it was my job to continue to work with the tools that I was given. And then going then through, the RTT complete journey and experience of the program, I was able to continue further healing. So I say now that up to a year ago, I've been PMDD free.
That's amazing.
Yeah, but up to that point, it was probably about 6 months. I feel like life tests you. You can't just say I'm arrived and this is it. Every day, I'm part of the journey that I put forth with my clients. That I'm
But
the
that's really what it is. And I think, utilizing RTT to get to the root cause doesn't mean it needs to be eliminated 100%. But like we talked about earlier, it's that deep awareness,
Mhm.
that deep understanding, which is so powerful, that knowledge is power, especially under hypnosis, that even if you do have those moments where maybe you fall back to an old trigger, you fall back to an old habit, you resolve it at a quicker pace because the awareness is so keen,
Mhm.
correct?
Yeah, I mean, there was
Wow.
no days of crying spells after that. And that's the other thing. You can see yourself worthy that I am moving forward instead of allowing that to be the stumbling block that's going to cause you to just, basically retreat, go within and be in denial for days, because that's what often felt the most familiar. But that was no longer familiar for me. My familiar was healing. My familiar was self love,
Mm,
self care. And I gave myself the grace And that's the beauty of the journey, right? You have to give yourself the grace to fall down, and then you just get back up. Like, that is the human existence. There is no place of like, this is where I'm at, and I've met, and I'm here, and I've arrived.
Yeah, no. This
So,
is a state
and
of
I was
mind.
so
It doesn't
proud of
mean
myself.
perfection. Yeah.
I was so proud of myself that I just didn't beat myself up. I gave myself a moment, and then it was okay, we're moving on.
It's
So,
really grace and compassion over shame and guilt,
yeah.
right? So obviously this has been transformational in your life. And as an RTT practitioner, a lot of people kind of niche in a particular area. I don't tend to niche per se, but is this a niche for you? Like, is this the area of expertise through which you work?
Yes. Yeah.
And so tell me, I'm just going to put up your website so people can see it. So tell me a little bit about um, what you do. What are you offering to people? Whoops, sorry about that. What are you offering to people to help them heal if this is something that speaks to them?
I have a living and luteal program. It is a 12 to 16 week experience where it's one-to-one support throughout the entire experience. It's 2 RTT sessions. It's a amazing command cell therapy and healing vortex session, and then weekly support calls managed around your luteal phase so that we're tracking, we're watching, we're accounting for the transition, the work, the progress, and we're monitoring it the entire way. And I feel so very privileged and blessed to be on the other side of PMDD, and to not only privileged to share the freedom and the healing that I've experienced, but because of the lack of awareness of PMDD, there's so many sufferers who are quietly suffering, and there's so much shame attached to this disorder. And so I really feel right now my niche is to proclaim the awareness of PMDD, and then to also say that there is healing and that there is hope and that you are worthy of healing. And when you can understand that you are worthy of healing, you will get there.
Healing is available to me, right?
Yeah.
So here's a question I have for you. When people come to you to work with you, do they realize they have PMDD, or are they coming to you with a different, like more of a symptom, like I have extreme rage or I have extreme anxiety? What do they tend to come to you by way of?
I do take clients that are suffering from anxiety and depression, low self-esteem and those blocks. But generally, we walk through in my first discovery call that's 30 minutes. We do a little bit more of investigative work about their cycle and what they're really experiencing. And I believe at this point, they're finding me knowing that I'm my PMDD experience and what RTT can do. So there is a lot of talk about their symptoms and what they go through.
And how have the results been for your clients?
Really amazing. It's at the end of a journey, we do an evaluation form of symptoms pre and post program, and the 8, 9s, and 10s are now 0, 1s, and 2s, and 3s.
You can't really beat that.
No, yeah,
no.
And I see it all, the whole healing journey. The more that I've understood it for myself, it's a complete restoration back to yourself. You get back to the original purpose and passion within you. And it's absolutely amazing.
I love it. I love it. Well, people, I have your website scrolling at the bottom of the screen, but once it's on a podcast, people won't see that. So let me just tell people, if they're interested in learning more about your program, they can go to your website, which is your name. It's www.pre www.rachellynfox.com. You have a great following on social media, and you're simply in Instagram at Rachel Lynn Fox, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. And so this has been so informative. I'm really excited about it because I think there are more people suffering from this than they realize. And my hope is that someone will listen to this today and say, oh my God, I think this is me. And they'll be able to reach out to you and they'll be able to get the peace that they're looking for, which is what we're all trying to offer our clients. So I have a question for you because I try to offer free resources to people as well. And I know when I went through my breakdown to get to my last breakthrough, I didn't have the money to really endure any kind of mental health help. And I really had to do everything at low cost or no cost. And I really turned to libraries and books and podcasts, YouTube videos. So if you had somebody that was like, oh my God, Rachel, I love what you do. I'm not ready to take the leap because I still need money to save. What's a good resource? Would you recommend this book that we just talked about earlier? Is there a YouTube channel or a podcast? Where could they go for more information on this?
Definitely Healing's Buried Alive. Huge key is Wild Power.
Tell me about that.
This book is really on the forefront of bringing awareness to menstrual cycles. Every single woman should be reading this book. Every single mother should be sharing this with your daughters. It is a conversation piece that we need to be talking about our cycles. We need to be in touch with, here I am at 44 and I'm just learning about these phases and really what nature has intended for us to really see within our cycles. I mean, it's a beautiful mystery. And, we've been, the topic of menstrual cycle awareness has been really suppressed.
100%.
With our doctors, our GYNs, our therapists, our psychologists, no one. And these beautiful women have started, it's called the Red School, and they offer programs to understand more, but they see the luteal phase as this tiny microscope as well, and what's really going on. So their approach is more holistic with really trying to monitor these moments, and they see it as there's an inner critic versus our inner champion. So our inner champion is the one who's, rallying for us really the whole month. But this inner critic comes in during our luteal phase. And if we can't understand the balance or the message that the critic is trying to give us, and to really draw in tune to that, there is really a lack of source within, that self-worth piece. So this book is very, very powerful for you to just take those first steps of understanding your phase, what you're going through, what you're experiencing. And it's their work is pretty profound and very forerunner.
Awesome. I love it. I had somebody on another podcast say to me, there's always a message in the mess. And I think that that's so powerful. Because it really is so true. And I think it's our greatest pain, whether it's physical, emotional, psychological, that really can be our greatest gift and our greatest learning tool. So this has been awesome. I really hope that people who are suffering themselves will gain a much better understanding that this is something that they can actually gain control of in their lives. And again, if you're interested in what Rachel said, follow her on Instagram at Rachel Lynn Fox, or go to her website, rachellynfox.com. I thank you guys. Again, as I mentioned earlier, this will be eventually on all podcast platforms, or my original series from 2020 there, called Strong as a Mother. You can find it on any podcast platform, Apple, Spotify, Castbox, whatever you use. In the meantime, if you're catching this on the replay, please put your comments below. Because I know that Rachel and I would both love to hear from you. So thank you so much. Thank you for coming on, Rachel.
Thank you for having me.